What is going on, all you awesome superhero aficionados? This is the Heroes and Mutants podcast. I'm Nick with my co-hosts Jimmy, Eric, and the Immaculate Ruben. Thank you guys so much for joining today's episode. If you guys are liking our content, liking our show, make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you guys are hitting that subscribe button also, and hitting the bell for the notifications so you guys are aware every time a new video gets posted. We also have a Instagram page at Heroes and Mutants podcast. Make sure you guys are following that to keep up to date with current news as it's happening, and for anything else that we're going to be doing as far as future raffles and giveaways. Once we hit 1,000 raffles, 1,000 followers are actually going to be doing away a pretty big raffle and a pretty big giveaway we haven't fully discussed, so help us get to that as quick as we can. And we really appreciate all your guys' feedback and support. As all that is said, we're going to get into today's episode. So I think one of the biggest things as far as news that's happened this week is that Marvel countersues to retain the rights to characters like Spider-Man, Iron Man, Doctor Strange, Hawkeye, Black Widow, Blade, and more. The heirs to the estates of Stan Lee and Steve Ditko are seeking full ownership to characters they helped create, and if successful, Marvel's rights to these characters would expire in June of 2023. If Marvel wins, obviously everything's okay, but if they lose, then they will lose heavy hitters, and it could change the landscape of the MCU and effectively, I wouldn't say bring an end to it, but definitely change things with characters that they were heavily relying upon to usher in this new decade of Marvel and MCU. So that's definitely a whole topic in itself, and we'll get more to it when we have the time. So just something to make you guys aware. And moving on from that too, Marvel gives an 8-episode series order to Grendel, a series based on the masked vigilante from Mark Wagner's popular award-winning Dark Horse comic book series. I'm not a huge fan, or I honestly don't know anything about Grendel, but I think that this is a pretty cool thing, especially coming from a company that's not Marvel or DC. Obviously, I think Dark Horse's probably most popular character would definitely have to be Hellboy. So I think this is a cool thing that we're seeing. What was that, Eric?
I just said, definitely Hellboy.
I think this is pretty cool to see, just because we're getting other companies are getting their foot in the door, and they're more taking those risks and showing. But I think everything too with like the comic book universe, it's cool to kind of not have everything so Marvel and DC related, because that's like the majority of what we talk about. So I had always wanted to kind of get more topics about other companies that have great, interesting characters that we don't know much about. So this is pretty cool. Once we get a trailer and at least casting news, we'll see how that goes, and we'll let you guys know how that develops. Moving on from that too, Mark Millar reveals there are plans for a live-action incarnation of Marvel Zombies, though details on the project haven't been revealed, which I'm wondering if this was because of the whole Marvel Zombies that they did on What If. It's just kind of weird that this information comes out like, hey, we're going to be working on this live action incarnation of Marvel Zombies, but that's all they really said. And that it came from Mark Millar too is like, I'm like a little bit wondering where that's coming from. But I think at this point, there's been so many zombie stuff. I don't know if we really need more. And I don't know, like the What If episode was very underwhelming for me. So we'll let you guys know how that develops as we learn certain things. And I thought one of the other interesting things that happened was they revealed the spin-off series for Penguin is in development on HBO Max, with Farrell approached about reprising his role, but no deal has been official. So I'm wondering if he doesn't come back, if they're going to have another actor cast in the role and do like a younger incarnation of the character or something. I don't, it's just a little like, that's a little bit weird also. So we'll let you guys know what happens when we finally get an actor who's going to be playing Penguin.
That's kind of ballsy, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, the movie hasn't even come out. I said it's ballsy because the movie hasn't even come out yet. We don't even know if the audience likes this version of Penguin yet, but they already said they're going to come out with a show. I don't know. It's kind of crazy.
That's crazy. Yeah,
yeah, it's a little bit weird, especially because like when it was first announced, I think we all thought that Colin Farrell was just naturally going to reprise his role. But then when they said he's been approached but no deal has been finalized, it's kind of like, wait a minute. So what are they like? If they can't really cast another actor if this is the same character, and that was because it was leading us to believe that it was him reprising his role, because I think like they had pictures of him like from the trailer saying, oh, Penguin show's in development. So naturally people thought, okay, well, Colin Farrell is going to be reprising his role. So it's just like, what are they going to do if he decides not to reprise his role, or if he is asking for too much money or whatever it is, which I'm sure is going to happen. But we'll let you guys keep you guys posted as things develop and who's going to be fully cast as Penguin when that develops. So moving on from that too, Chief Financial Officer Gunnar Windell says Discovery already has strategy plans for HBO Max and Discovery Plus when Warner Media merger is done, where AT&T agreed to spin off Warner Media and merge it with Discovery Inc. to create Warner Bros. Discovery, with the aim being to expand their streaming services to reach 400 million subscribers globally. So I feel like that's a pretty bold statement. You can definitely, I think a lot of this is related to HBO Max pursuing more opportunities for their streaming services and a lot of exclusive things specifically for HBO Max. And obviously we saw like Blue Beetle, we saw Batgirl, this Penguin show, the series that's going to be focused on the Gotham PD and Jim Gordon.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So I feel like that's it when they had also one of the rumors about what he is saying is that this is going to be when they fully go head of steam with revitalizing the Snyder universe. So I feel because he had what he had said is like, we want to give the fans what they want. So a lot of people are speculating that means they're gonna revitalize the Snyderverse in some way, shape, or form. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops and what's going to come about that. But
I'm waiting for HBO Max to announce the Condiment King show.
Condiment King.
I mean, I think we're definitely all waiting for like
a Kite
Man
deep.
show.
I mean, fuck, that's the next thing. We're gonna get a Penguin show. We're gonna get a Batgirl show. I mean, eventually we're gonna get to that point.
Definitely. One of the interesting things that also happened within the last couple of months, we didn't get a chance to report on it yet, but Tim Drake is confirmed as bisexual in recent Batman Urban Legends #6 in a story by Megan Fitzmartin and Balin Ortega. And honestly, when I first heard about this and seen it, I actually thought it could be it was an example of pandering, or like companies trying to be too woke and too ahead of the times and trying to get brownie points by saying, hey, look how diverse and how willing we are to tell these stories or to confirm this character as LGBTQ. But the more I actually thought about it, it actually falls in line with Tim Drake's personality, because if you notice, especially in his relationship with Connor, with Superboy, there was a lot of speculation and there was a lot of open interpretation to them, or at least him, being bisexual. I even think he refers to Connor as like his clone boy, which is a little bit, it was obviously heavily speculating on something, but I just feel like it perfectly falls in line with who Tim is as a person. And even though obviously one of his relationships that he's been on and off with pretty much throughout his whole inception has been with Stephanie Brown, I just think it's an example. It's something that fits his character. It isn't like something that came out of left field and all of a sudden this character is gay, or all of a sudden this character is bisexual. So I don't know how you guys felt about that, but that's exactly how I read about it, or how I thought about it once I started looking more into detail and more into Tim's backstory.
I'm okay with it. I think the idea, like, let's be honest, no matter what you do, if you insert any LGBT character, or for that matter, any black or brown or any kind of character, it's automatically going to be accused of pandering or wokeness. And at some point, you got to just ignore that, because the characters will never get in. If every time we try to let them in, it's going to be wokeness. It doesn't change Tim Drake's character very much, so I'm okay with it.
No. Yeah, I think it's fine. It doesn't take away from who we've known Tim Drake to be in the past. Like you mentioned, like it's almost in line with his character already. And I mean, it's not the first time we've seen that in comic books. Like there's all kinds of LGBTQ heroes now, and that they've done that retroactively with heroes, and it's never really been a problem. I think it's just really news, like because you said, because of wokeness, like people getting upset because they think he was straight the whole time, and it's like, well, who really cares? Like, I think the character Tim Drake is still there. He's still who he is, and the writers just have more ability to write about what their personal lives are, which is cool.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with y'all. Y'all touched all the right points. It's like because like I said, not the first time we've actually had someone that that's been like a different that has a different background or the gender they're trying to that they represent themselves. Because if you think about it, it's like you're saying, I think it's just making a big point because it's a character that we've known for a long time, like Eric said, that that we've known him to be straight, or we assumed he was. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, we just assumed he was, and then now it's like it's just going ahead with the times. Because even back then, those days, we knew there was people that that were either gay or lesbian or he, she, whatever they represent themselves as. But it's just people are more comfortable nowadays where they're just like, what, we could do this, and if they hate on it, then they hate on it. Like Nick is saying, and Jimmy said, people are always gonna have something to say. You just gotta ignore it and do what you gotta do. And because look at what is it, Batgirl, right? She or the C-Dub show. She's a lesbian. You know what I'm saying? So
that's true.
It's not the first time. So it's like I know it's on a comic book. So I just want to see what they're gonna do with that character moving forward. If they do it like in a live action or something where he might be representing he might be represented that way.
Yeah, I think it's interesting bringing that up too, because I mean we saw it recently with Loki, right, on the Loki show.
Oh yeah,
where
Loki.
They confirmed that Loki had a fling in the past with a man, so he's bi. And I remember a lot of people
back to the Loki character in mythology. The Loki character is sexual,
pansexual.
Yeah, because he's like it wasn't always a man, brother, or something like that.
Yeah. And I think even then, I think people got upset. Like, why do they need to talk about this? And it was like, why not? It's like I mean, you have to do what you can to make these heroes also feel human, right? Because that's the whole point.
Yeah.
I mean, 7% of the country identifies as LGBTQ. In a universe where there's that many superheroes, statistically, some of them are going to be LGBTQ. Same thing with villains too.
I don't understand how they can get into other aspects of their lives, of their family, of like even things that they like, and it's never a problem. But as soon as they start talking about their sexuality, people want to shun it or not listen. And it's just, I don't know, I find it so weird.
And we want these things to reflect the real world. There's a certain
exactly. Yeah, like Stanley said, the comic books are the stories that we see outside our window.
Yeah.
Definitely. So moving on from that to Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy video game developed by Square Enix is on pace to be the only video game not delayed further by the pandemic in 2021. It is set to release on October 26th. So we'll see how that goes. I don't know if too many people, that was probably the game. I don't know if as many people are hyping the fact it's coming from Square Enix after they developed the Avengers game. I don't know if they have all the credibility in the world right now. So that's probably another factor playing into it. But it's going to release next month, so we'll see how that goes.
That's crazy. It's crazy how they're bringing that out as soon as they canceled their comic book now. Marvel officially canceled Guardians of the Galaxy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
For now. It'll come back.
We'll see,
So, and then moving on from that too, Andy Serkis, the director, the actor first and foremost, he actually directed Venom, Let There Be Carnage. And he actually teased a team up between Venom and Spider-Man in the future, saying in an interview, that's the question on everyone's lips. They want to know when Venom is going to meet Spider-Man. Personally, it's never going to happen. I'm only joking. Of course it's going to happen. I think there's so much. It depends on when you want to get there and also what the appetite is. If people want more Venom stories, then to jump straight to Spider-Man, you could be missing out on so many great supervillain characters in between now and then, which I feel like is pretty interesting because obviously we know about Sony's plans to do a whole Sinister Six universe. Obviously we know they're doing Kraven the Hunter, and then with this whole thing also going on with other characters reprising their roles from different Spider-Man franchises in No Way Home. I feel like that's pretty much falling in line with what he's saying about there's so many characters to do before that. So I hope it's not something they're just tugging on our leg and they're just pulling on our leg and trying to get us excited about, because I think that's the thing where I'm not fully invested in what Sony is doing, because it kind of seems like there's no immediate plans to incorporate Spider-Man in the immediate future. And me personally, I don't want to see a Kraven the Hunter movie where he's off wrestling lions and fighting tigers in the jungle.
I do.
Okay, well you do, but I personally just want to see him fighting Spider-Man in New York. And same thing with Venom. I just think these are just wasted opportunities on great actors that they got for these characters, and to not have them try to fight off and square against each other, and this whole thing appearing to be about greed and about money and trying to rely upon the Spider-Man brand without actually incorporating Spider-Man is something that is kind of making me hesitant to everything that's going on. But I hope he's not just pulling on a leg, and we'll see how that goes. And we missed a couple episodes of What If, obviously, because we didn't cover them with the whole Killmonger rescue. What if Killmonger rescued Stark in Afghanistan? And then the whole, I actually really liked how they had finally a lighter episode with the whole What
Party
If.
Thor.
Yeah, well, I forget what it was called.
It's What If Thor was
what if
he was an only child?
Obviously, Loki was never adopted by Odin.
Yeah,
so
What If Thor was an only child?
Oh yeah, he became like a hedonistic party child. It was kind of cool to have a little bit more of a lighthearted episode and to kind of just have some fun in the story that they were telling, even though the story did have stakes and did have consequences. It was kind of cool to see that and kind of see a Loki and Thor that never became. It's kind of funny because it was so much on the nose about them being brothers, and I think Loki called him like a brother from another mother, which is actually kind of funny.
Yeah, they were actually cooler. They were actually cooler not being related, like than they were when they were related. I find that pretty funny.
Yeah. I actually felt like the most recent episode,
the sibling rivalry, the idea of like brothers are always competitive and want to outdo each other, with that element gone.
But yeah, basically, if y'all remember the first Thor movie, he was a party dude. He did not care about it, you know.
Killed about the victory
So basically, they showed that.
But I actually think the most recent episode they had of What If was the best one, and definitely was the one. Yeah. So, but next week is actually going to be the season finale for season 1 of What If. Make sure you guys check it out, and we'll make sure to cover it all in detail after Jimmy watches that. And also, Titans is going on right now. That also ends. I think it has 2 more episodes left. We'll cover that. Stargirl, which we need to get around to. So there's a lot of good stuff to come. Make sure you guys are posted and checking it out. And without further ado, now we're going to get into what the main topic of this episode was. If you guys don't follow us on IG, you guys won't know, but we actually have these fictional fights that we call Superhero Showdown that pits different comic characters against each other. And this week we decided to pit the 2 green icons of terror and the embodiment of fear and torturing their enemies to the best of their ability and causing extreme hardships in their personal lives. But so obviously you guys know who we're talking about. This week we decided to pit the Joker versus the Green Goblin. But there you go. And it was actually, I didn't expect it to go this way, but because obviously what we do is we run polls to see what you guys think and who would win in these fictional disputes. But we actually, when we ran this was probably the most heavily favored towards one side, where 77% said the Green Goblin would win to the Joker's 23%. And obviously because of Green Goblin being enhanced and because of all of that, and I think that was really what pushed it to people. But I actually thought that there would have been more of a fighting chance and people would have been a little bit more optimistic towards the Joker with it. So out of the other 3 battles, all 3 we've done all together, this is the one where it was most heavily favored. So first we're going to get into the Joker and his background, his history, his powers and abilities. So I'm going to let Jimmy take away that character's history and background.
Okay, so the Joker is known by many names. The Clown Prince of Crime is one of the big ones. The Harlequin of Hate, the Ace of Knaves, and one of my favorites, the Jester of Genocide.
That's actually my favorite. Well, one of my favorites.
These are such cool names. As far as the Joker's origin goes, I'll give you the basic origin. There's the basic origin where he is the Red Hood, somebody who was posing as a criminal to rob Ace Chemicals, but fell in a vat of acid dyed his skin white, his hair green, and his lips red, which is such a weird thing to happen, and was driven insane by this act. However, now this is where it gets interesting. The only thing that's consistent for most interpretations of the Joker is that he fell into a vat of chemicals and went insane. Probably the most popular origin story has him as a failed stand-up comedian in The Killing Joke, Alan Moore and Brian Boland's classic graphic novel. And in fact, that one-shot graphic novel that gave him a more definitive origin, even if it kind of cops out of that origin in certain ways, was like I said, it was meant to be one shot, but they actually kind of adopted it as canon in the DC universe, and that is the one that people most stick to. However, even within that version of the story, he also says that his past, if he had a past, he would prefer it to be multiple choice. So you get the feeling that even though what he's probably saying is true, it's not necessarily all true, and he probably remembers it as remembers the story in a way that's convenient for him to justify whatever he wants to justify at the moment. So he's very unreliable in that way. He first appeared in 1940, Batman issue #1. Now, just remember, this is the first issue of Batman. This is not the first appearance of Batman. Batman's first appearance was in Detective Comics in 1939. Became a popular character before they spun him off into his own world. In the first issue of Batman, the Joker announces he's going to kill 3 of Gotham's prominent citizens, including Henry Claridge, who is a judge. And they actually kind of mimicked that story. Yeah, in 2008's The Dark Knight. Now, The Dark Knight, I know this is getting outside of the comics, does not give a definitive version of the Joker, and every time he tells his story, it changes to something different, and you know that something bad happened to him. You're not sure. Then, of course, there's a Jack Nicholson version of it where it's consistent with the comic books in Batman '89 in this sense that he's somebody who fell into a vat of chemicals and then went insane. I think the biggest change with that is that instead of having him be a failed stand-up comedian, he starts off as a gangster, as a hitman, so he's already a really bad person by the time he starts in that movie. Then, of course, you have the Arthur Fleck version of the Joker, where he is also a failed stand-up comedian and quite a bit more pathetic than in most iterations. But the Joker is one of those characters that is very hard to pin down an origin. I think the best that we can do for a Joker's history is a loose origin where he fell into a vat of chemicals. What he was like before, whether he was a good person, whether he was a bad person, is up for debate and up for interpretation.
All right, that was a good one, Jimmy. So that was a cool background for the Joker. It's crazy how you were saying all the nicknames and all that stuff, because there was a couple of them that I didn't even know, and that's good that you put that out there, dude. But yeah, it's crazy because the Joker, he brings a lot to the table, you know, and that's why it was a tough one for me when it came to the Green Goblin and truly know the Joker. But I mean, it's up there. It's up there. It's crazy. I was surprised too, though, Nick. How I saw the poll, the rating, the percentages, and it was definitely one-sided, bro. It was definitely one-sided.
I think the Joker is probably a more popular character than the Green Goblin. But if you're asking for powers, it's obvious the Green Goblin is more associated with explosives and a glider and a lot of things that the Joker just does not do.
And he's a well-known, like, you know, intelligent. But yeah, that's something for you guys to handle in a little bit. Yeah. So let's talk about the Joker, right? So I mean, when it comes to, I mean, he doesn't have a lot of physical strength, I'll tell you that much, you know, but he has the knowledge. He's like a trickster. He reminds me of a Loki in a way, you know what I'm saying? But without the magical powers, he's actually just a human. But then there's also stories, you know, where they said that, like you were saying, Jimmy, they don't really know what happened, what his true origin story is, and all that, how he became the way he became, but. I mean, I know when it comes to, like, you know, his strengths and all that, he knows how to put. It's hard to describe, bro.
I would say, as far as the Joker's strengths go, I think the best way to put it is that the Joker is a genius, and I think this makes him probably a perfect foil or villain for Batman because a lot of them use their intelligence intelligence.
And he has that street cred too, from what we may assume and all that. Because like I said, when it comes to his mental strength, like he may look like you said, like the way he has this failure background to him, So, but he uses that to his advantage because he manipulates the way he may look. Yeah, he might look like some scrawny dude, whatever. Like, oh, he ain't nothing. But bro, he'll manipulate you. He'll trick you into doing different what was I gonna say? Different
he puts you in difficult situations where you're forced to choose between two awful decisions, and the idea is to make you feel like shit as a person, where you're forced to either blow up a building or blow up a bus full of criminals or something like that. There's always difficult decisions that he likes to present people with, and he likes to compromise.
Because his power, if you really think about it, his number one strength is his brain. Bro, because if he doesn't have, he'll maybe have a gun or two here and there, but he's still being manipulated with it. He doesn't really use it, if you think about it. And if he is gonna use it, he's gonna use it as a distraction to get away some way, somehow. Like he's just smart, bro.
He also has an aptitude in science and like chemistry. That's a big thing about the Joker is he has very intuitive when it comes to chemistry and science and things like that. That's why there's all the gases that he releases, the Joker gas that kills people and leaves them with those hideous grins on their face. So I think he has a little bit of a performance artist in him, a little bit of a scientist to go on top of it. So I just think that in comparison to somebody like Norman Osborn, who is more openly a scientist, that aspect of the Joker gets overlooked a little bit. But in order for all of his weapons and the things that he has to work, you have to have a good understanding of chemistry and science to pull off a lot of what he pulls off.
Yeah. Kind of, if I could add to that too. I know I'm doing Green Goblin later, but
I'll go for Eric.
I think we have things to say about all of them.
Yeah, right. I think the Joker, one of his like biggest strengths is his charisma, because he moves people to actually follow him, and I think that's seen very clearly in the Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix, and you can clearly see how he just moves a whole city into going into chaos. You see it in The Dark Knight as well. Like you see people like really at odds with, hey, this guy's kind of cool, like what he's doing, and he'll have like mobsters and like whole gangs follow him just because of what he's able to do. That one scene where he's in that room with all the like leaders of the underworld of Gotham, and he somehow just gets them all to follow him. That's insane, right? But the fact that he's able to move them, and he's almost like the quintessential like ideal for someone that is bad or like has like questionable morals, is like, okay, that is what I aspire to be, so I'm gonna follow this guy. As opposed to like, he's the leader. As opposed to like, I'm gonna follow like Batman and like I support Batman. He's trying to do something good. If you're not for that type of justice, like you're gonna go in the other direction. It's the Joker, and you're gonna move towards him. You're gonna admire him.
I also think his philosophy makes him dangerous. And in the best interpretations of the Joker, he has a point to make. And some of the points that he makes are valid and legitimate. Things that he says about human behavior, how easy it is for somebody's brain to snap, how easy it is, and how it's the constant struggle that we all go through to either do good or to do bad. And he knows deep down, even though in most versions he doesn't know how Batman became Batman, but he senses something in him, like him, that we both are traumatized by something. Whatever it is, it led us down almost the same path, but in opposite directions, kind of taking out all of, I don't know how, your damage in a completely different way. Batman uses the damage that he has to try to do good, and Joker uses the damage he has to try to do bad. And along the way, he convinces a lot of people that his philosophy and his observations about human nature are correct. And I think that's what makes him such a great villain, beyond just his powers and anything. He makes you question whether or not maybe he does have a point. What if Batman is actually wrong? A lot of things like that. It's his philosophy, like you said, his philosophy and his charisma and his intelligence, and that larger than life personality. I mean, just to come out dressed decked out in a.
Because he's just a simple man, you know what I'm saying? But he's just an ordinary dude, but he has something to say, and he has a way of getting people to listen.
I also think there's something like I don't know how to describe it. There's something primal about the character. I don't know how to put it. It feels like he embodies as a clown all of our worst fears. The Joker feels like a villain who's always existed, if that makes sense.
In the real life. That's why I was like when I was trying to explain. I like like I say, it's hard to explain like how villainous he is, even though he's such a simple man. Like we know what he's capable of doing, but it's hard to explain because he's just so simple about it.
Mm-hmm. I think. What would you guys say? Obviously, just because he's a normal human in most cases, but what would you guys say is his biggest weakness or some of his weaknesses?
Okay, here's my thing. I really question what the Joker's weakness is because there is a Batman story where the Joker and the Scarecrow team up on a mission together. So
yeah, I know what you're talking about.
The Scarecrow, being the Scarecrow, decides that he wants to find out what the Joker's biggest fear is. So he pumps him full of fear toxins. And the Joker's reaction to it, he just laughs and then proceeds to beat him half to death with a chair after trying to poison him and thinks it's funny. So I think that's what makes him scary. I don't know if he has any kind of fears. He doesn't even seem to care if he dies. In fact, if Batman threw him off a bridge and didn't rescue him, he would go down laughing, as we've seen in movies, because he's like, oh, I win. Yeah. I just proved that your morals aren't worth shit, and if you're pushed through just the right breaking point, you're going to behave just as awful as I do. I guess his weakness is that he doesn't have superpowers. But I think when you're that intelligent, when you're that good with weaponry, when you're that good with deadly poisonous chemicals on top of being philosophical and charismatic and able to get people on your side, I think that's what makes him dangerous. So he's one of those villains that's hard to pinpoint down a weakness. The only weakness I could think of is the fact that he doesn't possess superpowers. But I don't know if I would call that a weakness or not. He doesn't seem to have any there's nothing that you can use mentally on him to psych him out. It's impossible.
I feel like love may play a factor into weakness.
What happened?
I feel like the love for Harley might play a factor into weakness.
Maybe that's why he despises her.
Maybe just a little bit. Just a little
I think the only thing where they touched upon any kind of weakness that the Joker has was in Arkham Knight, when it was found out that he doesn't want to be forgotten and he's doing everything to leave a sick, twisted version of a legacy. So when he's kind of confronted with that, you see him act out and kind of be a little hysterical or be like, no, this can't be. And yeah, it's the first time you got it. And the fact that it's actually coming from Mark Hamill reciting his lines makes it that much better. But as far as weaknesses, I would say maybe that would be the only thing where he doesn't say it deep out loud, but some of the things he does is because he wants to leave a lasting impact and he wants people to remember him, even though it's for vain, horrible reasons. It's that fact of he's relying upon carving out a piece of history for himself.
I think what you tapped into is interesting because now that I think about it, his weakness is his narcissism and his ego.
Yeah.
And if you notice in a lot of the best Batman stories, the way that Batman trips him up is by playing with his ego, his sense that he has to be the one who kills Batman. Well, he's gotten out of situations where he could have been killed.
He uses his own manipulation against him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that manipulate him just through using his ego. He knows that but he'll never allow anybody else to kill Batman. So Batman even gets rescued by the Joker on occasion and knows how to manipulate that to the best of his ability. So I guess narcissism and ego are his weakness, which is not actually a typical weakness, I guess, for like a supervillain. Maybe it is, but it's an interesting one. It's mostly a psychological weakness.
Yeah, because I don't think Joker ever tries to really I mean, I'm not saying he doesn't try, but I don't think he really wants to kill Batman. Because if he does, what is he going to do without him?
Just be bored.
I feel like there's no one else that will challenge him better than that.
Definitely. So I feel like there's a lot of love given for this character. And me and Eric are over here. The blood is boiling because we're just like, what? This guy has nothing compared to the awesome other green terror icon. And I think me and Eric need to hit you guys with a few knowledge bombs to kind of discourage all of the hope and faith you have in your character, in this guy. So Eric, let's take it away.
Right there.
Let's take it away. Let's find out a little bit of history and backstory on Norman Osborn, aka the Green Goblin.
All right, for sure. So we're gonna focus on the Norman Osborn Green Goblin first of all. It's really interesting. Originally, the Green Goblin was not supposed to be Norman Osborn.
Yeah, that's
there
kinda
was
funny.
there was yeah there was actually Stan Lee and Steve Ditko. They were going back and forth on what who they wanted the Green Goblin to be, and they were even thinking like it was gonna be some like Egyptian like monster, and that was gonna be fighting Spider-Man and all this thing. But Stan Lee always wanted it to be someone that Peter Parker knew, right? He wanted it to be like this big reveal. And which actually caused Steve Ditko to leave Spider-Man for a season. Like this was a big contention point for them. I think in the end, Stanley was right because we've gotten this amazing backstory for Green Goblin, Norman Osborn. Norman Osborn is obviously like this big industrialist. He owns Oscorp. He had a partner at Oscorp when they first created it. What happened was he basically was able to take the power of Oscorp from him by doing embezzlement and and blackmailing him and just taking control of the whole company. And at the same time, his partner had a formula for, again, as we see in Marvel all the time, someone trying to recreate the super soldier serum. So
back to formula.
Yeah. So he had this formula for the serum. And Norman Osborn said, I can recreate this. So he tried to recreate it. He was not at the same level as his partner was with chemistry. So the formula that he created actually backfired and exploded in his face. What this caused is it causes him to, yes, he has super strength now, super agility, but at the same time, he has a, he looks green, obviously, but he has the like psychosis, right? So then getting more into the history of him and Peter Parker. So Norman always saw, I think it's really interesting how close these two are when they're not the Green Goblin and Spider-Man. Norman always saw Peter Parker as like the son that he wanted, right? Which was always a point of contention between Peter Parker and Harry, so Norman's actual son. And Harry not have, Peter not having his parents, always had, like, he always looked up to Norman Osborn. He always looked up to him. He always looked to him like he paid for his education, and it was like this weird father-son relationship. They had mutual admiration for each other, but when it came to actually having their alter egos, so Spider-Man and Green Goblin, they were the biggest of foes, right? And many times you see Norman Osborn actually as the Green Goblin trying to be somewhat of a hero, right? Like he would go out and he would cause things to happen, and he would go and fix them out in the city to kind of turn the people, the neighborhood, to like him. And I don't know where his like utilization of weapons came in, but I'm sure Nick will get into that. But obviously it doesn't look like a superhero. But in the end, that's kind of the backstory, and there's always been that point of contention. There's one really big story between Peter and Norman where we actually saw it, I think, in The Amazing Spider-Man, the movies, where Gwen Stacy dies. And we saw a part of it. So the Green Goblin
they swapped out Norman for Harry in that one, though.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So in the original, so there's actually two versions of this. In the original, you get the Green Goblin pushes Gwen Stacy off a building. Spider-Man goes to save her and catches her with the web, but her neck snaps when she pulls at the bottom. So he essentially kills her. And that was like Green Goblin.
What you said it now.
Why?
He essentially kills her.
Yeah, Spider-Man killed her. Like, but it's interesting because the Green Goblin wanted to take credit for it too. So he's like, no, like from a fall that high, she would have been dead before you caught her anyway. So it's almost like trying to make him feel better at the same time, like causing Spider-Man to do that. But there was actually I don't know if you guys have read the more recent comic books where they went into the story a lot more. And Gwen Stacy had actually been overseas in France, and Norman Osborn went and met with her. So obviously they don't know that Norman Osborn is the Green Goblin, and he impregnates her. So this dude legit impregnates Peter Parker's girlfriend. She has twins. They're born in France, and he hides them from Peter. And then when Gwen Stacy comes back, she is at a point of contention with Norman Osborn, and that's what pushes Norman to throw her off the building.
Damn, that's crazy.
Yeah, so this whole thing of like he hated Peter Parker so much that he got his girlfriend pregnant, had kids, and then went and killed Gwen, or tried to kill Gwen Stacy. Yeah, so I just think that's one of like the most extreme things I've ever seen a villain do.
Yeah, I mean it's Norman Osborn though. I mean, just how he treated Harry during like the Dark Reign storyline. Is an example of his ruthlessness and goes to show what I think that was like. These two characters were just such interesting contrasts. Well, it's similar, like very similar characters in almost every respect in their ruthlessness, how they're seen as arch nemesis of some of the greatest heroes in all of comic books, and all of the tragedy that they caused just people and the whole Marvel DC universe as a whole. Like, these two characters are so alike in so many ways, it was only natural for us to compare them with each other. And I think that's a prime example, is that they can both be extremely ruthless on any occasion.
Damn,
I wanted to add something to that.
Did it say why she cheated her?
I don't.
Yes, it says here she was overwhelmed by his charisma.
Oh my god!
I mean, that's another part.
Yeah. No, there's actually if you actually read, I was gonna say, if you actually read the comic, and a lot of like big comic book fans actually believe this too. It kind of hints towards him raping her. So because after that had happened, Gwen Stacy was just at a point of contention with him the whole time. Just like didn't want to talk to him, didn't want the babies to be part of his life, and again, that's part of his reasoning for killing off Gwen Stacy.
I'm gonna read up on that.
Okay, as nasty as that sounds and as mean-spirited as it sounds, I don't think it has as much resonance as the original version. I think the original death is more tragic. I think it has more resonance. The original plot is more worthy of the Joker. I think putting the hero in a position where he has to deal with the fact that his actions also contributed to his loved one's death is a lot more complicated emotions to deal with than the love of my life was brutally murdered or something like that. It forces the hero to tangle with themselves and to like really wrestle with themselves. And I think that's something that the Joker would do. And I think that's like a plot that's worthy of the Joker, which so many similarities between them. It does have the same resonance to me.
I just got the chills.
Yeah. So now that you guys have a little bit of an understanding of who Norman Osborn is and what he was before he became the Green Goblin, let's get into some powers and see how that if that evens anything or if that shifts anything in his favor with his battle against the Joker. So obviously, right off the bat, one of his biggest strengths is his genius intellect, and he was already a highly intelligent person even before the Goblin formula, and once he got hit with the Goblin formula, that increased his intelligence further. Obviously, him as a businessman, he ran Oscorp, so he was highly intelligent along the same vein of kind of like a Lex Luthor when it came to business savvy and all of that. And because of his, obviously with sciences, and he's very intelligent towards that, and chemical engineering, mechanical engineering, because he had to modify his technology and his equipment, created an Iron Patriot. Not only that, but because of his charisma, I think he's just so smart that he kind of figured out how to work people. Obviously, like one of the whole things that Eric had mentioned was his charisma and how that captured Gwen Stacy's attention. And obviously, this has affected him as a leader, and him being able to form and direct multiple teams to further his agenda, such as the Dark Avengers, the Dark X-Men, the Thunderbolts, and the Dark Illuminati. Another part of what his powers are, and one of the main things too, is he's actually very, very superhumanly strong because of the Goblin formula. And the limit of his power has normally been tested at like 9 tons, which obviously puts him on par with Spider-Man. Superhuman speed, superhuman reflexes, superhuman durability. Obviously, he doesn't have anything to a healing factor within the same vein of Wolverine, but he's going to be able to recover from injuries much quicker and he can withstand blows from Spider-Man. So obviously that already puts him, and the fact that Spider-Man is able to go full out on him, knowing that Peter Parker will pull his punches when he fights people like Kingpin to avoid seriously hurting them or killing them, him not holding back against Green Goblin just goes to show the fact of how incredibly durable the Green Goblin truly is. Superhuman stamina, obviously he can physically exert himself much longer than normal humans, as his musculature produces significantly less fatigue and toxins. Accelerated healing, which is what we talked about. He's got a lot of weapons with his Green Goblin suit, the pumpkin bombs, razor bat, electricity generation. It's actually pretty funny too. A lot of people don't know this, but when he first premiered, I think this is a funny thing to mention, but when he first premiered, or once I won't premiere, but when he was first in comics, when he first appeared, he actually used to ride a flying broomstick.
Yeah.
It was a mechanical broomstick that he used to fly during his first few exploits as a Green Goblin. I don't know if it was that whole thing because it was more touching upon that wizard aspect, or
it's very witch-like, and then the green skin. Even like the facial features of how he's drawn a lot of the time are how witches are drawn in a lot of like classic things.
Yeah.
The witches with their long pointy hats. Look at his design of the helmet.
The shadow has like the goblin look. It definitely looks very wizardry, but obviously he upgraded to something significantly better with the Goblin Glider, which I think that's one of the coolest.
I don't know. I think they need
things in comics. Like seeing the Green Goblin, the Goblin Glider as a kid, you're just like, wow, it looks like freaking awesome to be going through the city, terrorizing people and causing harm, misery, and pain. Like I would want to do it in that fashion if that was ever me. But obviously, like with that too, it's also able to afford him to carry other objects with him as he flew at much greater speed and mobility than the broomstick. And aside from that, now we're going to get into a few weaknesses. You have a good understanding of his powers, his skill set, and what he can truly do. One of his biggest, because of the Goblin formula, even though it highly enhanced his intelligence even further, one of the things was that it made him mentally unstable to the point that it cost him his sanity, and resulting in excessive arrogance and delusions of grandeur, which in effect it can have him make irrational decisions, and his insanity worsened after the gathering of the five, making him lose more perspective on reality. And the last thing on what his weaknesses is his pride. And his insanity has weakened his overall thought processes and views on reality, and he believes he cannot be defeated and often underestimates his opponents. An example of this is when Osborn captured Spider-Man, who revealed that he knew that Spider-Man was planning to escape. However, to prove his superiority, he decided to allow Spider-Man to escape so that Norman could fight him head-to-head. And this ultimately resulted in his defeat. So I feel like they actually do have similar weaknesses when you think. Like, they don't have many, aside from, being obviously...
Their pride, their ego.
You know what I think, though? I think insanity, when you're as insane as these two are, where both of them are characters whose brains snapped, you don't really... I mean, excuse me, you don't give an F as much. You don't give a fuck
exactly
much when you...
Well, I think it allows them to drop their guard and put themselves in situations where they would normally be victorious, but because of that fact, they have to prove their superiority, and they have to fulfill those delusions of grandeur and fulfill that arrogance and fulfill that vanity. Yep. It's going to allow them that to be a weakness, because they put themselves in those positions to where they normally wouldn't, or like a rational person would say, no, I'm gonna finish the job, and I'm not gonna let Spider-Man go because I have him, and I already am gonna be able to defeat him. So with all that being said, we talked a lot about these characters' backstories, their powers, their weaknesses. In an all-out fight between the two, how does this go? Let's begin.
Okay. I think that's a really, really tough one, and I think that there's arguments that are legitimate. To be honest, I'll admit, as much as I'm a Joker fan, like, there's arguments that to be made that the Green Goblin would beat him. And let's give the Green Goblin this: he has greater strength and ability and agility and stuff, and that's kind of what makes the battles between Batman and why did I say that? Spider-Man and Green Goblin so thrilling. Whereas Yeah, the Joker does not have that superhuman strength, though some iterations do have him as a better fighter, depending on who's writing him. Still not the level of the Green Goblin. However, I think what the Joker has on the Green Goblin is, I think, as crazy as they both are, I think Norman Osborn is still a little bit more human. I think that he's a little bit less evil than the Joker, and I think what makes the Joker scary is you could beat the shit out of him. You could beat him to a pulp, and the entire time
and he'll like it.
Be laughing at you. So on one hand, maybe
the Green Goblin,
yeah. And on the one hand, maybe the Green Goblin would beat the shit out of him, but maybe the Joker would get off on it or find some kind of amusement pleasure in it, and at his weakest moment poison him or do something. So I guess it just depends on who would have the upper hand. But yeah, that's a tough one.
I think we call it the high ground. We don't call it upper hand.
High ground.
The high ground.
The high ground, Anakin.
What do you think, Ruby?
Me, dog. I mean, like, it's like Jimmy's saying, like, it's tough. Like, obviously, like you said, you know, Norman has a little bit of advantage because of his, you know, strength and all that, healing power, like you were mentioning. But and then if it came to hand-to-hand combat, it would obviously be the Joker because he's the one that has more training to it. Or like I say, he grew up from the streets. That's what I'm assuming, at least. We don't know his background. But damn, because like I forgot to mention earlier, but yeah, the Joker even has his own weaponry and all that, you know, his own little bomb smokes. I like how he has his own little Batman belt, but he mimics Batman supplies with like the magic Mexican beans. That's pretty racial. Yeah. So I'm not gonna go into that. But damn, I ain't gonna lie. I would go with. I still go Joker.
Okay, I'm gonna give you two scenarios. In a physical battle, the Green Goblin's gonna win the Joker. However, in a psychological battle of the wills, I think the Joker has more on the Green Goblin. I think that Norman Osborn has more human attachments than the Joker does that could be exploited to his weakness in terms of his personal life. Whereas the Joker, there isn't really anything that you could hold on him. So in a psychological battle, I think the Joker could out-psych him and come top. And if
I'm trying to just go overall, because just imagine the Joker using his laughing gas on Norman, and he just starts beating the heck out of him. He takes his glider. I think that's the one number. I think the glider is the number one advantage he has on the Joker.
Okay.
If the Joker, imagine the Joker had that glider,
he would.
The gliders would kill the Goblin.
Yeah.
And that's only
he impaled himself.
Essentially.
Yeah.
What do you think, Eric?
I agree with Jimmy. I mean, throw them both in a room, and if we're talking about straight up fight as a showdown, yeah, Green Goblin's gonna win. But I think if you had like a whole like comic book about it, a whole series about it, if it was a battle of the wills, I mean, Norman Osborn has psychological problems, whereas I think Joker, he always has a point to make, and he dedicates himself to that point, and he's really meticulous about how he goes about it. Whereas Green Goblin, I think the Joker would run circles around him, around his mind, make him go even more psychotic. Like we see time and time again in Spider-Man comics, Green Goblin. It's almost like a running joke. Green Goblin forgets that he's the Green Goblin. Like legit, Spider-Man hits him in the head with a crowbar, and all of a sudden he's Norman Osborn, and he doesn't even remember he's the Green Goblin anymore. So, and we know who else is good with the crowbar? The Joker. So,
I mean, Jason Todd knows that.
Yeah, right.
I also think that in a long, drawn-out comic, the Joker would somehow use Norman Osborn's personal life and personal attachments to get up on him. You can't do that with the Joker.
Yeah, like a lot of times you see Norman like leave what he is doing to help Harry or to help even his grandchildren. He has grandchildren in the comics now. So he it's kind of what breaks him out of the Green Goblin mode sometimes, and he goes back to being Norman. And it's almost like a Bruce Banner Hulk thing going on there sometimes, where Norman Osborn wants to do good and wants to be seen as a hero. You see that in the Secret Invasions. Like Norman Osborn is the one that brought an end to the Secret Invasions. He was the catalyst that completed that story, and he ends up becoming like the hero and the head of U.S. security, right? And then he's trying to use what he can for good at some points as a hero, but then he'll just switch back to the Green Goblin, and it's just
Yeah,
crazy
and then
again.
I'm glad you brought that up because we also got to remember in the original, Spider-Man movies, they actually portrayed that part where Norman Osborn wasn't necessarily himself sometimes. It was the Green Goblin subconsciously talking to this fool, and so I feel like
he seems scared of that first too, doesn't he?
I feel like he has it's two different personalities. It's two different personalities, and sometimes one has control more than the other. That's how I feel about Green Goblin.
That makes
sense. I think the main thing too. Jimmy had brought this up too, but it's just that Norman has things to live for. Well, Green Goblin has things to live for, and Joker doesn't. Joker.
Oh, yeah, that's always gonna be.
I feel like even if it was in like an actual fight, there's nowhere to go, or they're in a small corridor, or maybe heck, they're in a small room, and there's nowhere for the Joker to run. I don't think he's just gonna leave it a chance. He's gonna have a bomb on him. He's gonna in his mind, if they both die, then he essentially wins. So I feel like he's the one that's gonna be more unpredictable in that way, the one that's gonna be more willing to sacrifice himself to accomplish his goals and to defeat his enemy and not go out in that way. And I especially because he can definitely be playing off of Norman's arrogance, where Norman's just probably breaking his bones and left him a battered mess and can't walk, and standing over him and reigning in his victory. But at the last moment, as little as you find that he's planted a bomb somewhere on him, and then boom. So I feel like, and especially if it's a psychological kind of battle, and 1-2 where Joker is able to exploit Harry, able to exploit his pride and his vanity and his arrogance, I feel like that's all stuff that comes into play. Yeah. Technically, it's no question, and it's not even up for debate that Green Goblin significantly outmatches him in every ways, in stamina, and speed, and strength. I would say intelligence, maybe more so like sciences. I still think that like chemists, they might be equally matched in that way. Obviously, the Joker has been shown to be very intelligent, very smart, and resourceful when it comes to stuff like that. Probably not on the same level as a Norman Osborn, but someone who's still very smart. But with that fact of,
it's also more diabolical too. I feel like most of the weapons that Norman Osborn, that Green Goblin would create, would be used for efficiency, and just to get the job done. Whereas Joker's things to kill people would leave a theatrical flourish. And a little bit
and that's what I'm saying in the end. Like that's why I'm glad Nick brought all that up, because for sure, Green Goblin has the upper hand.
Yeah.
But bro, who are you gonna trust to have a fail-safe? A fail-safe switch or whatever.
Okay, I would feel like I could have Green Goblin.
Sure, something up his sleeve.
Yeah, I would feel like I could outsmart Green Goblin faster than the Joker.
Well, I mean, the next battle we'll do Jimmy versus Green Goblin, and then we'll see how it goes. We need you to write your whole backstory and all of that.
Okay, so you remember in the original Spider-Man, the scene where he terrifies Aunt May, where Green Goblin pops through the
he follows her
while she's and like he leaves her horrified, those horrible yellow eyes. If Joker had popped through that, he probably would have killed her with gas and left her with a really ghastly grin, and would have left her dead, and would have tried to torture Peter Parker in a even more cruel way. I think
he would have left her laughing in front of Peter just to terrify him a little more.
Yeah.
Imagine seeing your aunt just crazy laughing. What's wrong with you, Aunt May? What's wrong? And then she just ends up dying, and then that's crazy. That's how you're gonna remember her last.
I think the Joker would gas a bunch of kindergartners if he had the chance. I don't think the Green Goblin.
Well, he did kill
I mean, like Arkham Knight, I think he went on a rampage and sliced up a whole kindergarten or whole preschool in that game, which led to Jason following. Yeah, so I mean, it's not out. It wouldn't be something that would be out of the realm of possibility or the realm of what he could really be capable of. So
I think the fact that he has no moral code whatsoever and very little conscience and does not care, I think makes him scarier, because he has less to live for. He's more psychotic, and he's going to go a lot further than Norman Osborn ever.
Bro, I just thought it was funny in the Dark Knight movie when the Joker robbed the bank, and then all the kids seen it happen, and they even see the bus following them afterwards, but then the teachers didn't notice, none of that. I was like, wow, they just played it out so smooth. That was crazy.
Yeah,
that's how Joker is. He's so casually, he makes everything happen so casually.
Exactly.
That's dangerous.
But for me, I think that the people were wrong on this. I'm going to go with the Joker 100%.
Yeah,
That's
I'm gonna
my
go
take.
Joker too.
I'm gonna go the Joker too, but I think there is an argument to be made for the Green Goblin in the
Oh yeah,
For sure.
Oh, of course.
I was thinking
Yeah,
to the Green
like
Goblin.
we said, like he significantly outmatches him in pretty much every physical aspect. And straight physical fight, he's gonna lose that 9 out of 10, but
like,
not
Yeah,
10 out of 10
in
times. But
reality,
the fact that the Joker is so willing to go above and beyond and so willing to do anything to accomplish his goals and to win, I think
like
that
you
makes
said, 9 out of 10
that
for
always
sure
gives him
Green
that edge.
Goblin, but that extra 10%, you just gotta go with the Joker.
Nah. I'm still gonna stick to Green Goblin, and I'll back that up. I think as like psychological as the Joker might be, I think the Green Goblin has that over Spider-Man, right? I think the fact that Spider-Man knows it's Norman Osborn, he has such a close relationship with him. Again, it's like it's like your dad turning on you. And it's like, yeah, you're never going to rat him out. And you see that in their first encounters. The first time that Green Goblin loses or forgets that he's the Green Goblin and goes back to Norman Osborn, Spider-Man helps him get back on his feet. And he's like, all right, hopefully this never comes back. But it does. So there's always that dichotomy between them. And again, like I think nothing beats the dichotomy between Batman and Joker. They're just like polar opposites and yet so similar at the same time is like the defining villain, right? But I think because of Green Goblin's relationship with Spider-Man, and I think that's just more direct psychological damage to Peter Parker that he's able to do than what Joker's able to do to Batman.
It's
right.
weird.
You got a point.
If you want to compare the movie versions, like what's interesting about what you're saying is true is that like the Green Goblin targets like Aunt May, targets Mary Jane because he knows these things. He knows he's gonna do things more psychological. But if you think about the Dark Knight with the way that Rachel dies, he caused him something very inadvertently without even realizing. Like he knows that's gonna hurt him, but he doesn't know who he is personally, so he has no idea how much more effective that was. That scheme was more effective than he ever realized.
It even hurt. That's how Two-Face came to be supposedly in story 2. Well, I'm like, bro, that just it hurt two people in two different ways.
Yeah.
It's
interesting.
So, So with all that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you guys so much for joining us on today's episode of Heroes and Mutants, and for also partaking in Superhero Showdown. This is the 3rd episode we've done. We're going to try to do this like every month, every other month, or as often, definitely as often as we can. We're not sure what battle and what heroes we're going to do next, but we'll make sure you guys are following at Heroes and Mutants podcast for updates on that, because that's what we're going to post, and you guys are going to be able to vote and keep it up to date with what's going on with that and all the other stuff. So thank you guys so much for joining us on today's episode. Make sure you guys are liking, subscribing, and sharing with your friends. This is the Heroes and Mutants podcast, and we will see you next time.
Catch it this weekend.
Venom Let There Be Carnage comes out this weekend. Make sure you guys check it out. We will cover it next time.
Stay for the after credits.
Why couldn't it be Villains and Mutants? Today was Villains and Mutants. That's all I'm going to say.
Villains and Mutants.
Oh, I love it.
Yep.